The first notification didn't vibrate. It cut through the silence, bright, invasive, like a blade sliding between my ribs. I was sitting alone on my bunk in the barracks, boots still laced, uniform damp with sweat that had already gone cold. My hands smelled like gun oil and chalk from the climbing wall. My right knee throbbed with the familiar, permanent ache from a bad landing during night drills 2 weeks earlier. Dawn hadn't arrived yet. The room was washed in that dull blue light that makes everything feel unfinished. My phone lit up on the metal locker beside me. Dad, we sold the house. No greeting, no warning, just that. I stared at the screen, waiting for context, another message, a correction, anything that would turn it into a misunderstanding. My chest tightened, not sharply, but with the slow pressure of something settling into place. Another message appeared. Dad, already moved out. The silence around me felt louder than the obstacle course. Somewhere down the hall, a trainee coughed in his sleep. Pipes rattled. The bass was waking up, but I couldn't move. I'd been in commando training for 6 months. 6 months of controlled chaos, of learning how little sleep a body needs and how much pain it can absorb if you don't argue with it. I hadn't gone home once. I hadn't complained. I told myself the house would still be there. Same porch, same cracked driveway, same place I could breathe when this was over. Then a third notification came through. This time it wasn't from my father. It was from Karen, my stepmother. She'd tagged photos into the family group chat. I didn't open them right away. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, staring at the floor between my boots. Commando training teaches you to control reaction. Breathe first, think second. So I breathed. Then I opened the photos. A farmhouse, fresh paint, wide porch, open lands stretching out behind it like a promise, and standing in front of it were Ethan and Logan, my adopted brothers, smiling, relaxed, dressed in clean clothes that hadn't seen dirt or sweat. Logan had his arm around a new dirt bike. Ethan was holding a phone, probably the one that took the picture. They looked comfortable. Something hollowed out in my chest. 3 nights earlier, I'd been waist-deep in freezing water during a navigation exercise, rifle strapped tight, learning how fast numbness turns into danger. I was eating ration packs older than some of the recruits. I was sleeping 4 hours a night, earning bruises I didn't bother to count. And while I was being stripped down to whatever was left underneath discipline, my father had quietly erased the only place I still thought of as home. My name is Daniel Carter. I was 27 years old at the time, a commando trainee. Not elite yet, not finished, just far enough in that quitting wasn't an option. I hadn't told my family how hard it was. I hadn't told them about the stress fractures, the nights my hands shook from exhaustion, or the quiet fear that maybe I wasn't strong enough. I wanted to tell them after, when it meant something. Another message appeared. Dad, you can come visit once your training is done. Done. Like this was a course you simply completed, like I hadn't already paid for it with pieces of myself I couldn't explain. Karen sent one last message. Karen, the boys are thriving out here. Fresh air is good for young men. Young men. I locked my phone and placed it face down on the locker. Inside that locker was my old civilian wallet. No cash, just an expired ID, and a photo of my dad and me standing in front of the house he'd just sold, his arm around my shoulder, both of us smiling into the sun. I lay back on the bunk and stared at the ceiling. Commando training doesn't teach you anger, it teaches you clarity. And as the weight of that message settled in, one truth became impossible to ignore. While I was learning how to survive without comfort, my father had decided I no longer needed a place to return to. That text wasn't just news, it was a line being drawn, quiet, permanent, and I was standing on the wrong side of it. I didn't respond to the messages that morning, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew whatever I said wouldn't land where I needed it to. Commando training has a way of sharpening that instinct. You learn quickly when effort is wasted, when energy is better conserved. By 0600, I was already moving. I was assigned to an Army Special Operations pipeline, still in the selection and qualification phase. No glamour, no patches yet, just a trainee number, a rifle that never left my side, and instructors who spoke in short sentences designed to strip you down to essentials. My job wasn't to look impressive, it was to endure, to adapt, to perform quietly and correctly when everything hurt. I was good at it, not because I was the strongest or fastest, but because I didn't panic when things went wrong. I could compartmentalize, lock things away, and keep moving. It's a skill you don't realize you've been practicing your whole life until the military gives it a name. Growing up, I learned early how to make myself small. After my mom died, the house changed, not suddenly, gradually, like a temperature drop you don't notice until you're already cold. My dad remarried Karen when I was 19. She came with rules, expectations, and eventually 2 adopted sons, Ethan and Logan, who were younger, louder, and somehow always in need of more. Karen wasn't cruel. That's important. She didn't yell, she didn't insult me, she just reorganized the world. Suddenly, my room became temporary. My things were clutter. My plans were uncertain. There was a drawer in the hallway, the one that everyone dumped random stuff into, old keys, batteries, junk mail. Over time, my things started ending up in that drawer. My letters, my spare watch, even my childhood pocket knife once. "You're not really using it," Karen said casually. That drawer became the metaphor for my place in the family. Still there, just not prioritized. When I told them I was joining the army, volunteering for a commando track, my dad nodded like I'd announced a change in majors. "That's intense. Just don't get carried away." Karen smiled politely. "Well, boys need structure." I don't think either of them understood that I wasn't looking for structure. I was looking for belonging. Training gave me that in ways I hadn't expected. Not warmth, but clarity. You knew where you stood, you knew what was required, you knew that if you carried your weight, no one questioned why you were there. Weeks blurred together. Land navigation, weapons handling, night movements, endless repetition. I learned the exact sound my boots made on gravel and how to distribute weight so it didn't give me away. I learned how to function while exhausted and how to make decisions with incomplete information. And slowly, quietly, I earned trust. There was a mission exercise near the end of one phase, simulated but complex, multi-day, low visibility. My team got pinned in a bad position due to a navigation error that wasn't mine, but fixing it was. I rerouted us, adjusted timing, and carried extra weight without being told. We completed the objective under the cutoff. After debrief, one of the instructors pulled me aside.
"You don't talk much, Carter," he said, "but you listen. That matters." A week later, I was informed I was being recommended for advancement to the next phase. No ceremony, just paperwork. A handshake, a nod. That night, lying on my bunk, I felt something dangerous. Hope. I thought about calling my dad, thought about telling him that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a waste, that I wasn't drifting, that I was building something real. I waited until the next evening, after lights out, when the base quieted down and the world felt manageable. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey, Danny," he said. "Everything okay?" That alone should have told me something. No excitement, no curiosity, just concern, as if my calling was inherently a problem. "I'm doing well," I said. "Actually, really well. I got recommended for the next phase." There was a pause. "That's good," he said slowly. "So does that mean more time away?" "Yes," I said, "but it's progress. It's a big deal." He replied. "Well, just don't let it consume your whole life." I stared at the concrete floor while he talked about Ethan's grades, Logan's new bike, the move to the countryside, how peaceful it was, how much space the boys had to grow. He never asked where I was sleeping, never asked what the training was like, never asked if I was proud of myself. Before hanging up, I said, "I might come home once this phase ends." Another pause. "We'll see," he said. "Things are a bit different now." Different. That word followed me for weeks. Then came the official notice, internal, procedural, unemotional. I was being considered for a formal commendation tied to performance during the exercise. Nothing flashy, nothing public yet, but it mattered to me. Against my better judgment, I texted my dad. Me. "I might receive a commendation soon, just wanted you to know." The response came hours later. "Dad, that's nice, don't let it go to your head." I didn't reply. Something inside me shifted then, not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly, like a muscle relaxing after being tense for too long. I stopped explaining. I pressed my uniform more carefully, not for them, but for myself. I ran my drills with precision. I focused on what was in front of me, not what I hoped would be waiting behind me. The chasm wasn't sudden. It had been widening for years. I'd just finally stopped pretending I could jump it. The dismissal didn't arrive as an argument. It never does. It came in fragments, in pauses that lasted a second too long, in replies that skimmed the surface and never touched what mattered. The kind of rejection that doesn't give you the dignity of anger, only the slow understanding that you are no longer worth effort. The commendation became official on a Tuesday. No banners, no speeches, just an email stamped with the seal of the Department of Defense in language so precise it bordered on sterile. It cited leadership under pressure, decision-making in degraded conditions, operational discipline beyond rank. I read it 3 times in the latrine, phone held close, boots planted on cold tile. Then I folded the feeling away and went to formation. That night, I sent my father a photo, not of the document itself, just the corner of the certificate, my name visible, nothing else. Me. It came through. The reply took 6 hours. Dad. Congrats. 1 word, no punctuation. I stared at it longer than I should have. Later that week, I called him, not because I needed approval, but because some part of me still believed in closure. He answered, distracted, the sound of wind and birds in the background. Hey, Danny, can't talk long. What's up? I'm flying out for the ceremony next month. It's short, but I thought maybe you'd want to come. There was a laugh, not unkind, just confused. A ceremony? He said. For training? It's not just training, I said carefully. It's a formal commendation. Well, he replied, that's nice, but we already have plans. Ethan's got a regional tournament that weekend. I closed my eyes. It's okay, I said, and I meant it, not because it didn't hurt, but because the decision had already been made, just not by me. Karen sent a message the next day. Karen, saw your dad mentioned something about a certificate. That's great. The boys are busy with school, though. Rural life keeps us active. A smile emoji. That's how it works. Achievements reduced to certificates, sacrifice translated into inconvenience. I stopped bringing it up. I pressed my dress uniform the night before the ceremony alone. Every crease measured, every button polished until my fingers ached. I stood in front of the mirror longer than necessary, not looking for pride, just checking alignment, making sure everything was where it belonged. The ceremony itself was efficient. Names called, handshaken, photos taken by an official public affairs officer whose job was to document, not celebrate. A colonel read from a prepared statement. I stepped forward when instructed, stood at attention, accepted the folder. That was it. No applause, no swelling music, just a record added to my file and a moment preserved in government servers. It was enough. Afterward, I sat on the edge of a concrete step outside the building, sunlight warming the back of my neck, and realized something quietly profound. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for my father to understand, not for Karen to validate it, not for anyone back home to catch up to the person I'd become. I had crossed a line internally, one they would never see and no longer needed to. A week later, the public affairs photo went live. Routine, tagged, archived. I didn't share it. I didn't have to, because some truths don't need to be announced. They just exist, official, documented, undeniable. And for the first time, I felt the weight lift, not because I was recognized, but because I had finally stopped asking to be. I didn't know when they saw it. That's the thing about public records. You don't control when they reach people who were never meant to matter again. I found out on a Thursday night after lights out, when my phone buzzed for the first time in weeks with a number I hadn't saved. It was Ethan. My younger brother never called, not once since I left for training. I let it ring. Then it rang again. I answered on the 3rd attempt. Hey, he said, uncertain. Is this a bad time? No, I replied.
What's up?" There was background noise, voices, a TV, the low hum of a house that felt lived in. A pause stretched too long. "I saw something online," he said. "A picture of you." I didn't speak. It was official looking, like military news. Dad didn't know about it. Of course he didn't. It was shared by one of my friends. His uncle follows army stuff. He sent it to me, asking if it was you. Another pause, this one heavier. "They used your full name and rank." I leaned back against the wall and stared at the ceiling. "Yes," I said, "that was me." The call ended awkwardly after that. No congratulations, no apology, just confusion hanging in the air like unfinished business. The text started the next day. "Dad, why didn't you tell us this was such a big deal?" "Dad, people are congratulating me like I knew." "Dad, you could have explained better." I read them once, then again. Not a single "I'm proud of you," not a single "I'm sorry I missed it," just irritation, discomfort, the mild embarrassment of being unprepared in front of others. Karen followed up later. "Karen, we had no idea it was so serious. You've changed a lot. You don't communicate the way you used to." I almost laughed. I hadn't changed. I'd just stopped shrinking. I didn't respond right away. I went through my routine instead. Gear check, conditioning, notes for the next phase. The world I lived in now didn't pause for emotional processing. That was a gift. When I finally replied, it was one sentence. Me. I told you what mattered when it mattered to me. No anger, no explanation. After that, the tone shifted. Calls became warmer, but not apologetic. Invitations were floated without dates. Pride was implied, never spoken aloud. They wanted closeness without accountability, connection without reflection. I declined gently, consistently. Not out of punishment, but because I no longer needed what they were offering. One evening, weeks later, I sat alone on a transport bus heading back to base after field exercises. The window reflected my face, older than I remembered, steadier. The ache in my knee pulsed in time with the road. That's when it hit me. The collision had already happened. Not when they saw the photo, not when the texts came in, but when I realized their recognition didn't move me. They hadn't stolen anything from me by selling the house. They hadn't erased me by choosing someone else's comfort. They just revealed where I actually stood. And standing there, unsupported, uncelebrated, unseen, I was still whole. If you're still listening right now, pause for a second. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Not for me, but because stories like this don't get told unless someone stays to hear them. I don't hate my father. I don't resent Karen. I don't blame Ethan or Logan for being given more than I was. I just understand now that family isn't who waits for you to come home. It's who notices the distance while you're gone. Honor didn't come from a ceremony or a certificate. It came from learning who I was without witnesses. And that quiet, that steady, unshakable quiet, that's what I carried forward, with or without them.